bring you our cancer awareness segment now, which comes up every second, fourth Wednesday of the month. It's an initiative that is with conjunction with the Commode Cancer Foundation. They're going to have a conference discussion now, so we just hand over the set to them.
Absolutely.
Founder, Commode Cancer Foundation, Dr. Denise Ajor, would be with a caregiver and support provider for a cancer survivor, Alaba Onasanya, and a daughter of a cancer survivor, Nicole Odia. Welcome, ladies.
Welcome, ladies.
Morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
You all look very beautiful. Over to you.
Morning.
Welcome.
Morning, everyone. Today we'll be talking about the role of the caregiver and family members on cancer. So, very quickly, so we don't waste a lot of time, I'm going to start questions, and I'm going to be starting questions with family. So, the first person to be talking this morning is Mrs. Odia. As a child of a cancer survivor, give us a summary of your journey and how you felt when you found out your mother was diagnosed with cancer.
So I found out in August of 2016. I was on holiday at the time, and she had called me and said, okay, I've gone to the doctors concerning my headaches, because she'd been having headaches for a while. So I think, she said, I'd gone to the doctors and they've said to me, I have a tumor in my brain. And I said, okay, so what exactly does that mean? And she said, I can't say yet, but I think it's cancer. And honestly, my initial reaction was like gut-wrenching. One, because I had suspected this for a while. I mean, my mum had had headaches for a few months before and had got different diagnoses. But hearing, you have a brain tumor, it was like, okay, honestly, this sounds more like it. So it was a scary reality. And I think the first thing I did was just cry. Cry because I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know what was going to happen. And just the general confusion of the situation. Following on, she said, okay, I've got to rush to see my GP in the UK and get everything started. So she did, and they confirmed, yes, that she had a tumor in her brain, and they would need to operate and get it out so they can find out the cause of it. And it was when we were going for that appointment, which is the biopsy of the tumor, that they said, Denise, I'm sorry to tell you that we found breast tissue in your tumor, which indicates that you have some sort of primary breast cancer, I think. I'm not a medical person, but yes, she had breast tissue, which indicates, yes, she had breast cancer. Again, it was that sinking feeling, because this time it is confirmation of cancer. The first time was, okay, you have a tumor, which is possibly cancerous. Second time, the emotions came back in full force. And I remember sitting there on the journey home, I was remembering all the family members, friends that I knew that had breast cancer, to convince myself that, okay, no, it's actually okay. Auntie this person, uncle this person, had breast cancer, so mum will be okay. I didn't know the severity of the journey ahead, because I think also as parents, you try to shield your children from the gruesome reality of some of the things. So she had a brain surgery, and on her 50th birthday, which was in September, my mum woke up and said, Nikki, I can't see. I can't open my eyes. And I said, what do you mean you can't open your eyes? And she said, I can't see. And those were some of the effects that she experienced from the surgery of taking out the tumor. And it wasn't until later on that my mum actually said, yes, part of the effects of having a brain surgery is you may lose your sight and other things involved in it. So the journey was not an easy one, but I was happy to be a part of it. I didn't want to live with any regrets. So I kind of took the journey and said, you know what, I'm going to be there. I want to be present despite the emotions. It was a harsh reality. Every day was like a dream, but I said, I want to be a part of it.
Thank you, Nicole. Wow. I can't imagine it from your perspective, but okay. Let's get on to Mrs. Onosanya. You are a friend and very close. So let's look at your perspective and what went through your mind when you were told. And I'm looking at it from your perspective as a friend, and I can say I know you were a carer. So go on. Good morning.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Well, for me,
When Denise told me actually that of the diagnosis, to be honest with you, I was very, very scared. Very scared. And I guess it's a case of, at the stage of where we were in life at the time, you become aware of the fact that, you know, anything can happen to you. And you start thinking about the family and what will happen. You know, who is going to look after them? Who's going to be there for them? That was what went through my mind when Denise first called me and told me about the diagnosis. But when I finally met with Denise in her house and she gave me the background of the diagnosis and the operation, because by the time I actually went to see her, she had had the operation then. I don't know, I will say the way she gave the information to me again actually dissipated my own fears and worries about the situation, because she had this positive way of coming across to explain to you what is happening. And I had to put my fears to one side, because I thought, okay, if my friend is talking to me this way, then I can't be afraid, I can't be scared. I've got to stand with her to understand what she's going through and do this journey together. But I won't lie to you, when I'm not with her, I am so worried, scared, thinking, hey, is anything going to happen? And I couldn't communicate that to her because she had a positive attitude and I didn't want to sort of mess with that. But I will not lie, I was very scared, because being a mother myself, I have to just picture all the kids and think, okay, what happened? You know, who's going to be there with us? But all glory to God, we're here today.
Thank you, thank you. You know, it's very interesting for me when I listen to you and people talk about what was going through their heads, because, you know, as a cancer patient, I don't think we all think that way. So, okay, so considering now, Alaba, I'm going back to you again, considering you have your own family, how were you able to balance your time with your support role? Were you actively involved, or were you sitting on the fence, or did you do both? How were you able to do it?
Okay. Well, I'm going to bring a different angle in just so that people will understand the stage where we are at our lives. Okay. Fortunately for me, my children, I only have 2 children and they're grown up. So that was sort of a way for me to be able to assist Denise. I didn't have to look after them because they're doing their own thing. They're both working. So I wouldn't say I was hands-on looking after them. But I have my job as well and I have home. But my role as a carer was mostly at the weekends. So once I finish work on Friday, I go to Denise's house and there stay with her throughout till Sunday before I go back home. But there are times that I actually stay there, as I explained earlier, because my children are grown up. I don't have to worry about looking after them or doing anything for them at home. So I could give that time. And I think that was a blessing in a sense, because if it had been 10 years ago, I might not have been able to do that because they will still be at home, you know. So yeah, it's for me, I see it as God giving us a chance to say thank you, because giving that opportunity for someone at least to be available to assist. And that's how I see it. It was just God's way of organizing our time for us. So yeah, that was how I coped. But I wouldn't say I was a full hands-on, because I wasn't there during the week, except when I'm asked to come in, and then I could stay the whole week with Denise.
Thank you very much for all your support, actually. Nicole, let's get to you now. You were not married when we first started this journey, and you got married during this journey. So, how have you managed your time? How have you managed time? As briefly as possible, because I don't want us to repeat the same things. Yeah.
So yeah, fortunately, I wasn't married at the time. Again, like Mrs. Nosaya said, for me it was a blessing. In the sense that I was able to be hands-on. What it's done for me now is I just try my best to be present, to do things, and to be active. So when the process started 5 years ago, when I was here, I would be here focused on everything, helping mom through chemotherapy, and it was intense. So yeah, it was good. I wasn't married at the time that my mother started the chemotherapy, but now the treatment plan, I think we've solidified it, we understand it. I'm able to move in and out and be checking on my mom, making sure she's okay. Yes, that's how I've been able to balance that.
Thank you. Okay. As a carer, so Nosaya, this is for you. As a carer, what can you say is the biggest reality of fear, and what would you advise? Did anybody going through this at this minute? What is the biggest reality for you as a carer?
Well, I mean, to be honest, as humans, you just think anything could happen, especially when it's just the two of you. But as I mentioned earlier, because of positivity, I sort of worked with that as well. Because if you weren't positive, if you were very scared yourself, then that will also make own worry more visible. But with your positivity and the inclusion of, I will say, myself as a carer, because you took me on the journey to go and see how the treatment worked. That sort of put my fears at bay that, okay, we can get help if there is need for help. And I knew who to call and what to do. So I think knowing what is happening helps the worry and the fear. If we don't know, if the patient doesn't tell us, then it will be difficult. But you carried us on and we knew what to do. So I think it's a mixture of knowing what the person involved wants, understanding it, and supporting them on what they want. Because our fear cannot be an overriding factor of how we look after the person. So for me, that's how I felt, at the time. And I still feel that way, but yes.
Thank you. So one keyword I keep hearing now is fear and how you manage fear, and mainly you were drawing from the patient helping you to understand how to go on the journey. Yes. I think that's what I'm hearing. Okay. Okay. From your side, Nicole, what would you say?
So I think the biggest reality shock I had was the reality that my mum may die. Unfortunately, that is the situation with cancer. You can't really run from it. And it was a conversation I used to have over and over again. Similarly to what Mrs. Onosa said, I would think, what would happen in life? I have a sister, but at the time she was 11. And I remember thinking, okay, if mum's not here, what's going to happen? How are we going to live? What's going to be the adjustment? How would life be without my mum? And I think the reality was actualized during chemotherapy, watching my mum. She lost her hair, her eyebrows, her eyelashes, pretty much any form of hair. She was swollen. And again, she was so positive that you couldn't be anything other than positive. I think if you were anything else, you were bringing the spirits down. So it encouraged everyone around us, especially my younger sister. But the harsh reality is death. And I appreciate the fact that during the course of the treatment, my mum had several conversations with me about what would happen if, unfortunately, she wasn't going to be around anymore. And I appreciate it because that's one of the fears I think we have as children. You know, what's going to happen to us? What's our life going to be like? What's the transition, especially for my younger sister at the time who was 11. I'm thinking, how is she going to continue on as normal as possible? And my mum kept drilling that conversation in to a point where I think we went on holiday. She was adamant, we must go on holiday in February. And I was wondering why. On that trip, at least 2 or 3 times, it was, you know, okay, Nikki, in the event of this, this is what I think is going to happen. I would like this to be done with X, Y, Z. And I think it's important because at least, you know, in the worst case scenario, you're not completely blown away and you have an idea of what's going to happen. And I think for children, it's a sense of security. The last thing you want is a parent to die and then to couple that up with now, whose house am I going to stay at? What school am I going to? Am I going to see my friends again? You know, these are natural emotions of children. So as parents in a situation as hard as it is, I think it is important to prepare for the worst case scenario. My mum was very passionate in her faith, but that didn't stop her from saying, okay, you know, the doctor said, this is what's wrong. This is what I need to do. But in the event that things don't work out how I would like, this is the reality of what's going to happen. So to round it up, the harsh reality is, you know, the possibility of losing a parent. But I think it's also important to discuss what would happen to the children in that situation to avoid any more confusion, especially if the parent is no more.
Thank you for that. It's interesting, and I really appreciate the way you are talking about it as a child, because cancer is real, and once people have it, the biggest fear, I think, is the statement death. So you've actually, I think you would have put a bit of, you would have calmed the audience view of what can be done and how to go about it. Now this is my main and final question. I think, has your experience as a child changed your attitude towards cancer screening and how? Screening
Yes.
and how?
Yeah, 100%. Personally, I'm not someone who's fond of going to the doctors. I don't enjoy it, but I've seen the importance of it. As I said, my mom was diagnosed with stage 4. And at that point, your options are pretty much limited. You know, you're going to have to go through some sort of aggressive treatment back to back. In my mom's case, it was brain surgery. I think she did 2 brain surgeries to remove tumors, gamma knife, radiotherapy, immunotherapy. So you're doing a lot of things, as opposed to, although it's not that cancer can come up at any time. So one of the things I experienced when my mom was diagnosed was, oh, but mom does regular mammograms and yet this can still happen. So that was a reality check to say someone who does mammograms so often can come back and face this kind of, you know, unfortunate situation. It means cancer can come in at any time and go straight on. So it is important to do your early screenings. It's important, if you think there's something wrong, address it. I think many of us are afraid of the reality of the confirmation or going to the doctors and hearing, yes, you have some sort of cancer. The advantage of that early on is you have so many options. You know, again, I'm not a medical person, but I know if it's early on and certain types of cancer, you may not need to do chemotherapy. And it can spread so quickly. So early detection of screening, routine screening is so important. I can't emphasize that enough. And it's just advice I'm giving myself because, as I said, I don't love going to hospitals, but I've seen the importance of it and how it just gives you options. You're not under pressure to do something. Nobody wants to hear you have stage 4. Fortunately, we're still here 5 years on, but it's not something you want to hear. I think if you heard stage 1 at the time, you feel a lot more positive. The positive energy that my mom was able to emulate, as Mrs. Onasaya said, it's not what most people would have. So you have no choice but to get on board. But averagely, if you compare that with finding out at stage 1, stage 2, it's completely different. So I'm definitely an advocate for early screening, routine screening. The time frame, you just don't know. So,
Mrs. Onosanya, and your final thoughts on screening, because as you are fully aware, Commonwealth Cancer Foundation focuses on cancer awareness. So, what are your final thoughts on this topic from the perspective of friends and carers?
Well, as Nicole has explained earlier, screening is important, especially for us women, not just women, men as well, but us women. We need to ensure that we do the regular screening. But as we know, in the Nigerian situation, it's not something offered regularly, and I think that's where Commonwealth comes in, trying to sort of educate the public, make them aware that you can do this. Ask your doctor. It might be expensive, but if you do it on time, it helps. Because I know it's a society where we keep saying, God is not going to let that be my own portion. But, God gives us the spirit of discernment. And then when we know that, what do we do with it? If we don't act on it, then it's wasted. So as much as we might pray and say, God will not let it to me, screening is important. The other point that I will say is that anybody that is going through the same, challenge, I'll call it, it's okay to let your family, close family, especially your children, know. Because if they are on board from the beginning, it's easier, much better than trying to hide the situation from them, because then that makes you feel weary yourself, because you're, living this double life of saying, okay, there's nothing happening, but deep down, you're worried about a lot of things. So I think, from my own perspective, I would try to share, as Denise has shared with friends and with family, and especially her children, right from the beginning, so that everybody is on board and they're all working with the same, towards the same goal, to make it better, to do all that she can do to ensure that everything goes well. So for me, screening and telling your immediate family is very important.
Thank you very much. You see, whenever you guys I always end up having to ask myself, I've still got a question for them, and I am going to ask one last question, please. Just bear with me. Nicole, in your view, as you've said now, this is a season of celebration for a young person. What would you say to young people who are children of either a cancer sufferer or a child who has lost their parents at this time?
I would definitely say enjoy every day. Wake up every day. Every day is a new day. Don't think too far ahead. Live in the moment and try to be present. Create memories. That's what I did, and it really worked for me. I'm very close to my mom, very, very, very close. So I literally spent my time every day talking to my mom, being active, wanting to help, and leave the treatment to do the treatment. I can't be the chemotherapy. So all I can do is be supportive, be loving, and be happy, because I think your parents also need that. They need to know that you're okay. And if you're wearing the sadness and you're constantly worrying, they won't be at their maximum. So please, I know it's hard, but it's to live every day and enjoy the days. You never know.
Thank you both very, very, very much for this time. I thank you to AIT for also giving us a platform to be able to talk about cancer. And from this point, I say all those who don't know Commonwealth Cancer Foundation, you can find us on our website, Facebook page, Instagram, and you can find the videos. For those who join us and don't know and don't want to be seen, I want to sincerely thank both of you for coming on live at this hour. I'm not sure you would have enjoyed it. And especially to AIT, thank you for this platform. We look forward to seeing everybody again next year at the beginning of January 2022. God willing. Have a good day.